Hi, Leah.
Hi, Judy. How
What
are
are we
you?
doing? I'm doing okay. I'm
Are
feeling a
you?
little. That's a good question. I am getting by. My body feels very overwhelmed. I notice I have just been very overwhelmed. I have not been able to sleep all week. I'm excited to talk to you so I can figure out what's going on.
Yeah,
How are you
I'm
doing?
okay. I was like the beginning of this week, I was feeling really like flighty and all over the place and not grounded. And today I feel like I'm dropping in a little better. Yeah, just feeling like my head's been up in the ethers, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's like hard
Mm.
to actually form sentences. Like I found myself telling a client yesterday, I'm struggling to even form sentences right now. And I just want to give you a heads up, that's where
Hmm.
I'm at. So
Hmm.
yeah, I find
So
in times like these,
to clarify, head in the ethers, what does that mean for you?
like the way that a great example of that is I see things in pictures, and then it
Hmm.
takes me a long time to actually be able to tell people the images that I'm seeing, like
Oh,
what is showing
interesting.
up.
So for me, it's a felt sensation, and then I get the
Hmm.
pictures,
Uh-huh.
and then I get
Interesting.
the
So
words.
somatic first. Uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
Huh.
Which I wouldn't have understood that until we talked about it just now. Thank God we're.
Interesting. I appreciate you sharing that. Hmm.
Hmm.
We all have our ways.
Hmm. Uh,
Oh no, I was just going to say the image piece.
hmm.
And so your question fit perfectly into that. It's just that's a way that literally how this manifests for me is like seeing an image first and then having to describe what I'm seeing. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
Mhm.
Which I think is a nice segue into one of the reasons why I wanted us to continue these talks is I don't think I've found any spaces to talk like this. So as I was overwhelmed, I have my groups where I process this and teach people how to do it. But I don't have like spaces where people generally don't look at me like I have a third eye.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so being able to even clarify, like, oh, this is my experience of when I get an intuitive download or a
Yeah.
wondering is how I name it. And then
Yeah.
I'll float it by someone else's nervous system because I'm going to be picking up stuff that's resonant in my lifetime, in my ancestry,
Mhm.
in my sense. And other
Mhm.
people are going to pick up their own. And so this is the start of an exciting project, I think. Do you want to say
Yeah,
anything
for
about
sure.
that?
It's funny. I pulled some cards for us before we
Do
hopped
it.
on.
Do it. What is it?
And I'll see how this comes together. But when I was like, I pulled a card for just the energy of this project and I got Raccoon. I used the animal spirit deck from the Wild Unknown. And so I pulled Raccoon, and I'm curious what comes up for you when you think about raccoon energy?
I do feel like it's a fun, like scavenger kind of energy. That's what comes to me.
Yeah, totally. That's what I was feeling a lot in this. And also the sense of like raccoons are like master makers, I feel like. They also organize really well. I remember a time where my husband was beside himself because there was a gang of raccoons coming towards him on the sidewalk and they wouldn't back down. This was in Cambridge. And he was like, I don't know what to do. Like, they are stealthy creatures and they know how to organize and they come in packs. And anyway, so I also feel that energy, like this organization energy. And
That lands. I thought you were thinking like organizing like boxes. And I was like, that's not
oh,
me.
no,
But organizing
no, it's like
communities and
community.
connections. Yes,
Yeah,
that lands.
community and
Okay.
like
I'm relieved.
protection. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then also, I feel a lot of fierce love in raccoons. They're like
Hmm.
really scrappy
Loyalty.
when they need to be, and
Hmm.
they're really protective when they need to be. And they're super cuddly. I don't know if you've ever seen tamed raccoons, people that have rehabbed them, and they're just so playful. They're a lot like cats. So, yeah, so that was what I pulled for the energy of this project and
Hmm.
this series. And then I pulled a card for each of us. And so here we are. I pulled the crow for me and the deer for you.
Interesting. How does that land for you? Crow's
It
prophetic,
lands.
right?
Crow is, yeah, the description around crow is a lot around magic. And
Hmm.
I think we often think about magic as being like really huge, like really. creating a spell and it works and something massive manifests. And I feel like for me, magic is really subtle. It's actually really subtle
Mm-hmm.
and yet still profound.
Mm-hmm. I keep
So,
thinking of like when cuts get scabbed over, that
yeah.
feels like magic to me.
Uh-huh.
Like the beautiful,
Because
like some wisdom knowing how things are going to
hmm
just come back together. I love how
yeah.
you explain that.
I love that too, and that imagery, and also like scabs being really, I guess it depends on how big the cut is, of course, but
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
they can be
Mm-hmm.
like very small and yet so
Mm-hmm.
powerful.
Mm-hmm.
How does deer land for you?
I don't know. I just came from a vacation in Vermont
Yeah.
where they have all this deer fencing. So my initial
Mm-hmm.
thing is deers are persistent creatures because they're
They
like they eat
are.
everything. So I don't know. How does it
Uh-huh.
land for you?
Yeah, I love that. I see a lot of persistency in deer too. It's amazing if you think about deer, it's like growing up in West Virginia and probably in Vermont, it's like this too. There's hunting season because deer are so prolific, right? And even though they're hunted over and over again, they persevere, right? I think that really speaks to what you're saying, right? They just keep showing up.
Mhm.
And the other thing that was coming through for me a lot with deer is I think a lot of mothering energy. And
Mhm.
I think of that in you. I've always felt that in you, that there is a mothering energy that's really clear. And maybe that comes from like my days as a supervisee with you as well, but I definitely feel
Mm,
that. And
mm,
like a mothering of community. And then also playfulness.
mm.
And what I keep hearing you say over and over again is this work is so fun. I just have so much fun with this work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's so funny. I have such a trigger around the word mothering.
Uh-huh.
It's extractive for me. It's so
Yeah.
based on this concept of sacrifice.
Mm.
So I'm gonna zhuzh it to nurturing. For some reason, I don't know. I have this resistance to mothering. It's almost like my kids. I was like, okay, we gotta go. We gotta pack up the car. Let's go. And they're like, Mom, you're
Mhm.
gonna do it. And I'm like, I need you to help me.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Hmm. Hmm. So,
Yeah.
how do we introduce what we're gonna do together in the next few weeks? Few podcasts. I don't. We're making a podcast, Leah.
We're making a podcast. There's our introduction. Yeah, I'm curious to hear from you. What's your vision if we're thinking in pictures lately?
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
What's your vision of this?
So, I feel in body first.
Yeah, right.
So, in my body, the podcast, interesting. Can I zoom out for a second?
Mm,
And I'm going to tell you how I started on this path. I went to an
yeah.
astrologer like 10 years ago, and he was like, I hear you in radio. And I was like, what? He's, you need to do like web workshops or whatever. And I remember when he first told me, I was like, my hands are sweaty. He's, you got to
Uh-huh.
deal with it. So
Uh-huh.
it's been this process of getting ready for the radio, right? Because he kept saying I could hear
Mm,
your voice. So, how does it feel in my body now as I am understanding the
yeah.
project? Meaning, what is the project of my lifetime? It's grounding. So, when I think
Mm,
about us doing this work together, creating
mhm,
this, spinning this magic together, this magical love, I think of a groundedness.
mhm,
One of the images I always have with my groups is grounded into the earth like a tree, and then you pull in
mhm,
the light from the sun above you. And it's so much of that. And if you could put maybe a microphone to the earth and listen to the trees talking, this is what I think this is for me. It's shh, listen, there's a message brewing.
mhm,
And it's really important. That's what I
mhm.
feel.
I love that you said brewing. What comes up for me is connected to my crow card was the image of a cauldron on the earth,
Mm,
right? The roots of the
mm,
trees under the earth, under the cauldron, and this amazing healing elixir being served from it, and people in
mm,
the community partaking in that.
mm,
Yeah. And dancing, playfulness, and fun. And
mm.
illumination.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Hmm. And what's our podcast going to be called, Leah? You spun this into being.
I had a classic shower download
I
the
love
other
those.
day. I kept telling Judy for some reason, I feel like words hold a lot of energy and names hold a lot of energy. And so I kept saying to Judy, I'm waiting for like a name to drop in. And I was in the shower the other day and thinking about different words that we've bounced around.
Hmm.
And the phrase that came through, or the name that came through, was the anatomy of ancestral alchemy.
Hmm.
And I think that speaks to what Judy just shared in terms of her feeling in her body first, right? You
Hmm.
feeling in your body first.
Hmm. Yeah.
And what I shared in the first, I don't know if we want to call it an episode of this, but the first iteration of our work together and me going into restless leg syndrome and feeling
Hmm.
my way through that and learning from that. And there's just so many ways that our body speaks to us and
Hmm.
shares things with us,
Hmm.
right? Shares
Hmm.
wisdom. And then obviously you've been using the word alchemy. So I would love for you to talk about why that word has really been standing out to you lately.
Hmm. I have been noticing the shift in the work that I do. At first, it was like healing boundaries, right? And now it's alchemizing ancestral trauma in the sense of I started noticing patterns with the
Mm-hmm.
people that I work with and
Mm-hmm.
following again the body, like somatic work, and then wondering things based on what I was picking up in my body, based on what I knew about their ancestry. And what's been going on miraculously is that people are getting their own intuition around unhealed generational trauma. And the cool thing about this and why I love it and it feels so fun is I feel like I'm in a detective movie and the people that I
Mm-hmm.
work with are the protagonists in their movie, the hero. And so what I've been noticing is in alchemizing, in metabolizing, in regenerating, composting this generational ancestral trauma or legacies, they're coming out with this gold that they get to spin into the life that they want to live now. And it's been remarkable. So that's why I've been using the word alchemy is just like spinning something to gold.
I love
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the reason the word alchemy resonates with me too is this idea of like, when I think of your comment of spinning something into gold, I'm like, what makes the thread? And
Yes.
in my
Mm-hmm.
world, it's like the earth, the cosmos, astrology, listening to earth energies and working with earth energies, minerals, like
Mm-hmm.
materials like gold,
Mm-hmm.
even things like the way we put potassium and magnesium in our body to support our nervous system. Yeah, I just think alchemy is so powerful in the ways that we think about different worlds merging and supporting healing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think for me in this particular moment in time is I see that the world is ripe for it. And there are not a lot of spaces that I have found yet
Mhm.
where there's been some container or guidance for it or even words.
Yeah.
So when you came up with the name, I was like, this is going to be one of those places that we're going to be able to
Mhm.
explain what's happening on a global
Yeah.
scale and bring it down to the nervous system, individual body level so that
Yep.
people feel less lost and hopeless
Mhm.
and start to look for the breadcrumbs to their
Mhm.
story that they get to rewrite.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I think that's the other thing I so appreciate about you and to me connects you with deer is when I think of deer, they're really observant, like very attuned. And I feel like something I hear you say a lot is feels like the right time or the time is right. Like
Hmm.
you were just saying, to me, that feels very deer-like also. Yeah.
Hmm.
Mhm.
So I think we're going to drop an episode every 2 weeks, maybe, or every week,
Mhm.
depending.
Mhm.
How I like to work, and I'll check this out with you, Leah, is I follow energy. I want to try it out to see how it lands first in my body and then see what tweaks we need to make. So,
Yep.
in case people are expecting something exactly at noon on Tuesdays, I tend to run a little late. I want this to be a project that is exciting and fun and has
Mhm.
a life of its own. So I'm going to be
Yeah.
following the intuition of this project too. Any details or things you want to highlight for this for us, Leah?
I don't think so. I think I just am, I'm like, let me check in with the images. I think more than anything, I'm just feeling a lot of gratitude for, again, your ability to capture this time
Mm.
in history and the importance of this work and reeling me into it. Like, I feel very grateful that we're doing this together. Yeah. I'm like,
Literally, I was like, what do you think about this idea? How about, do you want to try it and see what happens?
yeah. And I took the bait and I'm here and I'm excited. So
Hmm.
thank you for the invitation. And I'm excited to see where this takes us. And like you, I love to follow my intuition too. So
Hmm.
I'll just take it as it comes.
Hmm. Hmm. I want to name
Mhm.
something that just came up when you were saying that.
Yeah.
Oh, I did. I did convince Leah to do this. And then it's like I had a drop in my stomach. I was like,
Uh-huh.
no, it's not good or bad. It's just information. So I was like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, what if this doesn't turn out the way it's supposed to? And so when I get those feelings, I know that
Mhm.
it's an adaptive part,
Yeah.
right? So what do I mean by an adaptive part? An adaptive part in the world that I am, with the work that I do with my clients, it's how we each have needed to adapt in our different developmental stages to survive the systems in which there is massive oppression and fear and scarcity.
Yeah.
So it feels
Mhm.
important to name this fear of disappointment because I think it really runs the show for most people.
Yeah.
And so I want to make sure that our time together, and I know you and I have this agreement, but I'm mostly explaining it for the audience. When there's dread or fear, it's not sustainable.
Mhm.
It runs on the fumes of cortisol and adrenaline.
Yeah.
And so as I'm allowing this drop in my stomach, the dread that's ancestral, to drain out of my body so that the earth can help me metabolize it because it's from ancestral trauma. I'm also imagining the light filling into my body, and the light represents unconditional love and grace and belonging. Just reminding my body that this is something that we're co creating right now, and that it's not intended to something that will bind us,
Right. Yep.
that will imprison us or structure us,
Mhm.
that we're really following what is unfolding in the energy field. Yeah. And now it's so interesting. Is it okay if I keep going?
Yeah.
So as the dread falls out of my belly, now I have fear going up my back. I feel like there's a target on my back. And this is also ancestral, so I will try to invite it to drain out of my body, although I don't think all of it will go because it's not safe right now. But the fear is really what you and I are going to be talking about, Leah, are really countercultural and speaking truth to power.
Yep.
And historically, what's happened to people who speak truth to power? Murder,
Right. That's right.
harm, persecution,
Hmm. Yep.
burning, hanging. So I am taking this opportunity for you and me to spend together with great gratitude and respect and care. That it's put out in a way that's respectful and honors the safety of the people who are journeying with us. How's that land?
Yeah. I can feel you speaking from your heart, which feels
Mhm.
really potent and meaningful.
Mhm.
And I definitely honor the last piece of what you shared around harm that's been done.
Mhm.
And even when I mentioned the word cauldron, I was like, there's a little like zap in my body around, oh, anything pertaining to witches, right? Back to our
Mhm.
first
Right.
episode, and definitely for me feeling into what it means to show up this way. Yeah. And then holding a community alongside that, like you said.
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
is, there is a responsibility that comes with that that I don't take lightly. And so I'm very aware of that as well.
Mhm.
I also hear the piece around, was it disappointment you used in the very beginning? Yeah.
Mhm. Fear of disappointment.
And fear of disappointment.
Yeah.
Yeah. And feeling for me, what can often show up is like the fear of disappointing myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's something I'll be tracking a little bit throughout this process too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The story I make up, it'll resonate with a lot of the listeners.
Mhm. Yeah. Anything
Okay.
else on your end?
I don't think so. I just want to get started. I'm very excited.
Good. Me too. Me too. Yeah. And I do have a lot of gratitude for being here. And yeah, I think you're helping me show up in a new way. And I appreciate that a lot. So thank you.